Hi, it's Edwin Rutch, and this is the first Restorative Empathy Circle that we're doing with Republicans and Democrats. I want to really thank each of you and welcome each of you for joining this circle.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
You
So
too.
I wanted to first maybe start off with what the intention of this circle is. And what we're really trying to do here is to foster empathic connection and dialogue and understanding between different political parties and movements. And we know, like right now, it's quite a tense time in the country with the elections kind of going on. So I hope we can contribute to creating more understanding between the different parties. And what I thought we'd do first is if each of you could just go and introduce yourself, say something about yourself and maybe what you're passionately working on at the moment. And on my left here is Jacob. So perhaps you could start, Jacob.
Yeah, sure. I want to thank Patrice for joining us. It's Patrice. Is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Uh, I'm happy to be here. It's a cool football weather day in Utah, sunny out. I am, my current passion is I'm working on an online class for ADHD that is not funded by the pharmaceutical companies. We actually talk about meditation and nutrition and all sorts of stuff that you don't hear about on the commercials. So that's what I'm working on and excited to be here. I'm wounded from this election, so I'm hoping that Joan and Phil can help me heal.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Jacob.
you.
And Phil, one thing I'm noticing a little bit of an echo, Patrice, if you could mute kind of in between from
Sure.
yours. Thanks. Phil?
That's a good idea. I'll try to remember to mute my microphone when I'm not speaking. I forgot about that. Yeah, hi, I'm Phil, and I am speaking to you from far upstate New York, which is often not even included on many maps. It's so far upstate. It's very beautiful here. It's very fall weather with amazing leaves and a rainy day. And I'm a political science professor and currently working on dialogue and dialogue theory and trying to, in particular, promote red-blue discussion. And I've been writing about the need to do more of that for some time. And I was fortunate to find Jacob and work with him on this issue and recently worked with Joan. So it's very, very good to be here, be part of this.
Okay, Joan?
Well, I am very excited right now about the work I'm doing on living room conversations, which is an attempt to make it possible for anyone who wants to have a conversation across ideologic lines. And in particular, we're suggesting co-hosts, and Phil and Jacob were one of our early co-hosts, in fact, and just invite two friends each to have 2.5 hour conversations about a given subject. And they had a conversation about gay marriage. We've also had about energy and about money and politics and immigration. And all of the conversations have been really valuable, and the people find they like each other, first and foremost. And then the issue area, we find that there often is common ground. Now, I think the issue of gay marriage may be the first one where I didn't hear about common ground so much as respect for each other's orientation coming out of it. But there's all sorts of things to learn, and I'm very excited about learning it. And it's wonderful to get to try an online conversation and see how that works. So thank you for hosting this.
Thank you, Joan. And Patrice? You're still muted, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
My background is in international pro-family advocacy. I spent about 10 years doing pro-family lobbying at the international level, mostly at the UN, but also at the EU the African Union, Organization of American States, Human Rights Council, any kind of international treaty body. For the last few years, I've been doing political consulting, mostly on international campaigns like in Haiti and in Mali. And right now I'm working on an independent project to help MIT. What I'm doing is gathering stories of people who know him personally and sort of the human aspect that has not been covered by the media very much. So
Cool.
that's me.
Great, thank you. And I think we're okay now with the echo. So what we're going to be doing in this process is I'll be posing a couple of questions. And what's kind of unique about this process is we're using reflective listening process, which is a process that kind of helps with kind of slowing down the conversation and really making sure that everyone feels fully heard. And hopefully that will help us kind of see more of our common humanity and come up with, find some common ground. And so in this process, reflective listening process, someone will start speaking and they will direct their speaking towards someone else in the circle. And then the other person that they're directing their comment to will reflect back what they're hearing the speaker say. And so you as the speaker are kind of the guide for that person to really hear what it is you're saying. So if they don't quite get what you're saying, you can just repeat it, or you can repeat it in a different way until they really hear what you're saying. And then the conversation kind of continues until you keep speaking until you feel fully heard. You'll kind of feel that you've kind of said whatever you have to say. And then at that point, the conversation, the next speaker is the person you were speaking to, and they will select someone in the circle, speak to them. They will be reflected, and we'll just keep going around like that. So to kind of model that, what I'll do is maybe we'll start with someone and you can kind of direct your comments to me, and then I'll reflect it and kind of just kind of share. I'll kind of model how that works. So I'll wait maybe a second till Joan kind of gets settled here.
Patrice, just so you know who you're talking with, Joan is one of the founders of MoveOn.org, so she's kind of your peer in terms just for the wrong side. She does great work.
I get your emails every day. I appreciate knowing what the media is going to report on about an hour before they do it. Thank you.
Well, so yeah, we can get started then. Perhaps Jacob, you'd like to start. And I'll pose the question. The question is, what is your most important value, and how did that value become important to you? And I am getting a bit of echo again, Patrice, so you'll need to mute there. So thank you. And then go ahead and just start, sharing that, and I'll reflect back. And the other thing you'll see in this is, as the speaker, you might want to give some pauses so that the person that's doing the reflection can kind of not have too much to reflect at one shot.
Can you repeat the question and have somebody else go first?
Okay, sure. I could put it, the question is what is your most important value, and how did that value become important to you? And I'll open it up to anyone that would like to start, and directing it towards me.
I don't want to be the first one, but I might need to volunteer. I see hesitation.
Okay, you're not sure if you want to be the first one, but it looks like you will be the first one.
It's such a tricky question in a subtle way, just because there's the things that you value in your life, there's the things that you value as in relation to other people, and so on.
So let me, if I can just say,
I value many things, but also, okay, Edwin, I'll direct this to you. I think I'd have to list compassion as my first value. But to me, that means understanding others and trying to act in a caring way towards them, whether it be through policy or personal interaction, whatever it takes. And And the assumption in there is that people, in a way, are always doing the best they can. That is, they have some moral point of view, even if it's ill-informed or whatever. And they when you get inside their situation, you relate to them as a fellow human being, and you care about them as if they were yourself.
Okay,
And that's
right.
how's that?
Yeah. So what you're saying is compassion is your most important value, and that it was compassion is related to policies and something else. Can't remember what it was. And
Well, compassion is the value. It's just that the way how to be compassionate depends, right? It might mean you need a policy for to support infant nutrition, or you might just need to listen to someone when they need to be heard, or stop on the street and ask if they're okay. I mean, it's a million ways. It depends on the situation.
okay, so compassion is a value, and there's a million ways that it can be kind of manifest through to the person on the street or to the infant, or there's many ways that it can be manifest.
It depends. The point is, it depends on the situation. What counts as compassionate? So you have to really know your facts to be a compassionate person.
So to
Not
be
enough to be nice, and you have to try and understand that other person. Both. Does that make sense?
I keep repeating back. So compassion, it depends on kind of the context then. That what compassion means is kind of like the context.
Yeah. Okay. That is what compassion requires depends on the context. Right.
Oh, what compassion requires depends on the context. So you have to see the context and see what compassion comes up.
What it requires of me, like what do I have to do? What should right? Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So compassion, it depends on the context for you. What your response is going to be.
Right. Yes, I need to know as much as I can about, for example, the economy, so I know what is needed so people have a chance to make a living.
Okay, so you need to know about the economy and kind of the context of what's happening so that you can kind of respond with compassion.
Exactly. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel fully heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do. I mean, we could go on for an hour about the economy or something, but that's not the point. That's the basic picture.
Okay. So I'll share my value, and my most important value, surprisingly, is and I'll direct it to Jacob. And so my most important value is empathy. If you like to reflect that, I'll just give you. Oh, we lost your audio. Maybe you muted.
I did mute it. Sorry. Will you tell us more about why?
Just reflecting is all I'm asking for.
Just reflecting from what you said?
Just what you heard me say. Just reflecting back what you heard me say.
Your most important value is empathy.
Yeah, that's it. Great. So, and my most important value before empathy, was seeking and questing. I was like a real seeker as a young kid. And I spent, after high school, I spent 10 years traveling around the world, kind of seeking, kind of looking for the meaning of life. And I kind of came across empathy, and I found, well, this is really what I was seeking for, that sense of connection with others.
Sense of connection is what empathy means for you then?
Yeah. And I did this whole traveling around the world as a seeker in my young days.
Why? The seeking, why did it shift from seeking to empathy?
No, that's not quite what I said. I was saying I was like a seeker as a young child. Not a child, as a teenager. I took off spending 10 years and traveled around the world seeking kind of for the meaning of life.
So you spent a long time seeking for the meaning of life, and you came to empathy as kind of what you found.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so excited about empathy. It's so cool. because it really kind of connects me to other people, and I just love the feeling.
You're super excited about empathy for how it connects people, and you're also wanting us to feedback exactly what the person is saying rather than building off of it or asking something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I feel fully heard on that. So it's up to you can share your value, how that value became important to you, and direct that towards someone else who will reflect.
I'll talk to Joan. I don't agree with Phil about everything, but I agree with him about my most important value too. Compassion, or you can call it different things. I kind of think of it as charity in the New Testament sense. And I like how you actually define it, Phil, in terms of the needs of the other being as real as my own. Um, so I'm kind of talking about Phil's comment to you, Joan. That's my important value. I think because I've been um, cared for compassionately and seen how much it means. I've seen what it means to others. We just got back from visiting our foster girl who's living in another place, and I relished that, and I've relished that with Phil, and I've relished that with you, Joan. It's kind of just this feeling held and cared for by another. That's
Okay,
that's it.
you said so much that was good in that, but the core of it, I think, was that you share with Phil his compassion as primary for your value, and that, you know, when you see that happening, it satisfies. And boy, as you were saying it, I was thinking of lots of other good things to reflect, but that kind of is the essence of what I was hearing. What more would you like me to fill in
That's great. I feel understood.
there? Okay. Well, so I guess maybe that means it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. You know, core values, compassion is an awfully good one.
Who are you directing this towards?
Well, I think Patrice, because you haven't gotten your turn yet. And I think we take turns on this, if this is good for you.
It's whoever you want to direct it to. You don't have to do turns.
Oh, but I want to hear from Patrice
Mm-hmm.
too.
Great.
And Patrice is the person I really don't know in the group, so it's good to meet you. But compassion is just compassion is about loving people too. You know, it's like, is it love or is it compassion? And are they really different? I'm not sure they are. They're, different ways of expressing that emotion about caring about others and caring about, a big circle of others, hopefully. So I think that's a value that almost everybody has to some extent, and the more we can be in touch with it, the better.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you share Phil and it's Jared?
Jacob.
Jacob, I'm sorry. And Jacob's belief that compassion is the supreme value, and for you, compassion is almost indistinguishable from love, in that it's a concern for the others, be it small groups or large groups of, like, potentially extending out to humanity. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you.
Is there more? Or are you complete?
I am complete.
Okay, so my turn.
Your turn.
I too find that difficult to top as far as values go. I might have said love as a
Who are you
term.
directing this towards? You can choose anyone in the circle to direct it towards.
I will circle back to Phil.
Thank you.
So I might have termed it love or charity, but as a supreme value, I think that that is the superlative.
Say that last part again.
I think that as values go, that I can't think of it greater than I would call it charity, but since we're equivocating charity with compassion, love, then I would say that.
Yeah, okay. I hear you saying that the word you would pick is charity above all, or love, but that it's akin to compassion. Is that right? And can I don't know if this is the right kind of follow-up question, but can you say more about what charity means to you or how you understand that?
Okay. Well, if we want to start getting into more meaty or political things, since you did refer to the implications in public policy, when thinking about my political values, I would tend to prioritize liberty. But in thinking about how that aligns with my more deeper values, in terms of public policy, I think that allowing people the freedom to choose and therefore to learn and to grow is the most loving thing you can do. And so in terms of political discussions, that's how I would apply the concept of love.
Thank you. I think I understand even more what you mean by charity, that it has to be charitable calls for providing people with freedom to choose, responsibility, and so forth. That's part of, in practice, what charity means.
Yes, in terms of this discussion. Yes, in terms of this discussion, since it's political, I definitely think that's a part of charity. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm getting some echo, so I was trying to mute appropriately. Yeah. Do you feel heard?
And so we just continue. You can speak to whoever you wish to for a while.
Anybody can speak to whomever?
You can direct your comments to anyone.
Yeah, this would be for Patrice or Jacob.
Specifically one.
If Patrice, I'm getting there. Patrice, this I'm glad you added more, and it makes me want to say or take note of this important fact that we all have the same value, and yet we could think of very different, or maybe we disagree about what it means to act and enact that value. And that it's great to realize and remember that we have the same value, even though maybe we do disagree in that other way. So I'm noticing the word charity. To me, charity, and this could not be what you mean, maybe. Charity means something. When I hear that word, I think of an individual act or the act of a nonprofit, but not of government policy paid for by taxation, right? And so, whereas for me, compassion might require the latter. In many cases it does, but in many other cases doesn't, and so forth. So that's maybe where liberals and conservatives start to drift apart, right? Is that my view of the facts and whatever is that we have to have such and such government programs to be compassionate. And then someone else might say, well, actually, that's not compassionate, right? That's going to take away people's choices or not give them enough liberty or so forth. Does that make sense?
So now I restate his position?
Yeah, just reflect what you're hearing, the words of the essence that he was saying.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the distinction you're drawing is that there actually is a bit of a difference between your choice of words, which is compassion, and my choice of words, which is charity. And that is charity is more of a private enterprise type of endeavor, whereas compassion might necessitate government involvement, correct? Or am I understanding right?
Yeah, that's very close. I'm wondering if that's a difference between us, and I'm trying to respect that difference and get a sense of it. I'm not assuming that it is, but that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I do think that you're right, that is the point where we are going to disagree. And so if using those terms differently facilitates that discussion, then I think it's fine. The terms don't necessarily need to mean that, but for purposes of this discussion, I think that might be useful.
Right, or how about just think, okay, different people understand what compassion requires. They come up with different answers, and that's all right. That's what we can debate and discuss. So at least, but we all care about the same thing, which is great.
Yeah, I don't think that compassion applied through.
At this point, we're just wanting to reflect until he feels fully heard, and then it'll be your turn to add anything.
Okay. I can't think of what I need to restate right now.
I feel pretty heard, if that's all right. And maybe, Patrice, you want to speak to one of the members of the group to respond and see if we hear you properly.
I don't have anything in particular. I mean, I can speak more about charity and compassion. I mean, I don't know that I have conclusions. I have run a nonprofit for my entire career.
Who are you Who are you directing this towards?
You.
Okay, great.
Well, I don't know. So give me the structure again. So
just tell me whatever you want, and I'll reflect what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that you've run a nonprofit for quite a while.
Well, we all went around and we did our things. And so where do we go from here?
We can just keep the conversation going for a while around this. Just keep following the thread, whatever comes up for you.
Okay, well, what comes up for me is that I've run a nonprofit for my entire career, and I've done a lot of humanitarian work in addition to political advocacy. And how to actually help people is something that I spend a lot of my brain energy on. I'm very interested in not just doing things to help people, but actually helping them. Like, what works? Okay. I'm not interested in improving people's situations. I'm interested in improving people. And so this distinction that we're drawing, it is an interesting one for me.
Okay, so you've worked with nonprofits, and you've been wanting to kind of contribute, but you're wanting to do it in a way that actually works, something that works, and you're wanting kind of a clarity about the distinction between kind of helping people and doing what really works.
Yeah, but there's more. That's good. Restate a part of it, but I'm trying to think about how best to explain it.
So you're thinking about how best to explain it.
A lot of activities, a lot of humanitarian interventions improve people's situations, but they do not improve people. The people are no better themselves. They are no more. They're not better people. Their circumstances are just improved, and that's what I'm interested in.
Okay, it's that there's interventions that kind of help people, but it's not really helping them be better people themselves. And that's what you're interested in, is not just the helping people, but that they are kind of better people themselves.
Yeah.
Well said.
Is there more?
Very important.
No, that's
okay.
That's all for now.
Then I will continue, and I'll speak to you, Jacob. I'm not quite sure what to talk about.
I have an idea.
No, I'm asking a reflection for that. I'm not interested in your idea. I'm interested in a reflection.
You're not sure what you want to talk about.
And I'm not interested in your idea.
And apparently you're not interested in my idea either.
At this point, I really want to be reflected.
you want to be reflected, which I'm understanding has a particular meaning for you that I wasn't, that I'm not accustomed to, so it's new.
Yeah. Yeah, so and I'm very grateful for you taking part in this. I mean, extremely grateful.
You're happy and grateful that I would be a part of this.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
And you're feeling heard too.
And complete, and it's over to you.
I think I would like to direct mine. Can something be directed to everyone, Ed? Is that against the rules?
Right now, we're just trying to do to one person, so that, ideally. If you would like to, we could try that. Sure. Then, let's try it.
Well, I'd like to riff off of Patrice and suggest that I do think it's interesting that we don't often hear liberals and conservatives agreeing that they both care about compassion, they both care about other people, that instead there are a lot of accusations of one side being, conservatives are often accused of being the people that don't care and we're not compassionate particularly because conservatives have questions about some of the dominant programming that that is created and designed to be compassionate by a certain group. And it's just refreshing. I'm just thinking it's refreshing to just say compassion is something that most human beings care about. And maybe the conversation is about what does that mean? What does that look like? I just wrote a paper in a social work journal. We argued that there's so much attention to whether an intervention works, whether a particular therapy or a drug works. That Prozac works. We all know it works. That there's less attention to what does it mean that it works. Does that mean it improved your depression for 3 weeks? Does it mean you're better 5 years later? And I think that the combination of acknowledging that we all agree that we want to be helpful, we want to be effective, we want to offer things that work, and then move to this really interesting question of, so what does it mean? What does it really mean to be helpful? I think there could be a much more nuanced and rich conversation among liberals and conservatives that would be much less about accusing each other of not being compassionate or not caring about this or that, but we could figure out how to be more helpful and more compassionate and more successful in our interventions if we did it together, rather than one side just claiming to have the answers and accusing the other side of just being getting in the way. I don't know. Does that make sense, anyone?
Yeah, I was hearing that you were kind of finding it nice that the conservatives and progressives were having the same value, and you're kind of maybe, I don't know, that was just kind of working good for you, and that sometimes that one side or maybe Republicans get judged for being heartless, and that you wanting to get kind of past those judgments, and there was more that I didn't hear.
Jacob, I heard you suggesting that if a conversation is framed a certain way, if it's framed as how can we best care for each other, that might lead to more results, common ground discovery when there is common ground, mutual appreciation, and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, and especially Phil, if that conversation happens on the foundation of what Ed talked about, if it happens on the foundation of our shared acknowledgement that we care about other people, then we could actually talk about nuances of what that means and have a really interesting conversation about kind of what Patrice was getting at, that, is it, what exactly do we want to change? How do we want to change? And that almost never seems to happen because there's so much accusation in the air. And maybe that's especially true during the presidential election season, which is always now, it never ends. But just that maybe a more productive conversation could happen if that basic core acknowledgement of, well, yeah, liberals really do care about other people. Conservatives really do care, and so anyway, it's simplistic but refreshing.
You feel that it would be a good foundation just to acknowledge that conservatives and progressives are actually coming from a space of caring for people as a foundational starting point.
Yeah. Contrasting that with a feeling of accusation that so often permeates political discussions I'm involved in, including discussions with other conservatives about those liberals. There's a sense of accusation, like those liberals, they just don't, and if the air is not cleared on that level, it's kind of like in my marriage, if there's accusation in the air, there's no learning. There's no real productivity.
Hey,
it's just tension. So
when you feel heard, Jacob, I want to mention something to Patrice and see what she hears, what she thinks of it.
I feel heard. Go for it.
Yeah, Patrice, you're the other quote-unquote conservative here, although, of course, we're all individuals and we got to be careful with labels and all that. And it's great getting to know you. But I pick you for that reason because I want to ask you about something Jacob and I encountered. You might know that Jacob and I we did a long conversation together for a couple of years, and then we turned it into a book. So because of that, we ended up in a conversation with a woman who was having trouble getting along with her sister. Then we spoke to the other sister. They didn't want to speak to us together. And it was kind of, I wouldn't call it dialogue therapy, but we were talking to them about how they could maybe get along better and things they might try to speak about politics better. And this is connected to what Jacob just said. The conservative woman clearly loves her sister. She said, my sister's very caring. She's very loving. And the problem that I have that's hard for me is that I know liberals are selfish. All liberals are selfish, and yet she's caring and loving. And how can this be? And this is a big problem for me. So I'm actually wondering if you have heard that narrative that liberals are selfish, or that connects to how you think. But am I making myself clear?
So you're asking me whether I think that liberals are selfish, or if in my interactions with other conservatives, the general prevailing narrative seems to be that liberals are selfish.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'd like to learn a little more about that. That surprised me when that woman said that.
No, actually, selfish isn't the word that I would choose. When Jacob was talking earlier, I was thinking of the classic joke, if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not conservative when you're old, you have no brain. I think that whereas conservatives are more likely to be accused of being heartless, the prevailing narrative among conservatives about liberals is that they're not as intelligent.
Right. That's more what I'm used to hearing, or, yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes, I hear you saying that the prevailing narrative is more often, or the one that prevails is that when a person grows up, they should learn and move past their naive liberal views when they're young. That certainly ran into that. Yeah.
I think that would be the stereotype, yes. And I do think it's important to differentiate between educated and, like, there's definitely the ivory tower view of liberals, right? But that's different from being smart.
Yeah.
Sorry, for lack of a better, this is a colloquial, what people say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you feel heard, Phil?
Yeah, I feel heard, absolutely.
Okay. Patrice?
Sure.
Yeah, or, yeah,
Or,
go ahead.
yeah, anybody, I guess.
Don't feel like, Joan, you have to stay silent there.
Nope, I'm
But
good.
go ahead, Patrice, if you have something to say.
I don't. I was about to hit mute.
Yeah, I thought you were getting picked on a lot there, so I thought I'd turn to Joan and pick on her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, well, I'm actually musing on this process because, you know, it affirms for me that when we sit down and we talk together, it's the common ground is not hard to find in terms of the deep values. And the question is, what are the processes that allow us to make connections that are good enough so that we can have the more difficult conversations about the place where we have different answers for how to actually engage in the world. And I'm, my experience of Skype doing a five-way conversation is it is a flawed medium. But yeah, I suspect in a year or two, it might be substantially better. I'm hoping it would be. Right now, I don't think I would choose it for a conversation just because there's so much hesitation, so much technical challenge to the piece. Though in person continues to be the best, but this is also meeting with people that, I only got to see you and Phil because there was the once every 2 years NCDD conference that you guys were going to, which is, only happens once every 2 years. So figuring out an online capacity would be wonderful. So that's my thought as I'm engaging in this conversation, appreciating that even with a flawed way to gather. And, Edwin, that's certainly, it is what it is right now. It's worth experiments. It's a good thing to experiment.
Yeah, I was hearing that there was, that you were saying that people can kind of come to a common ground, and you're interested in the processes that can kind of foster that. And that one of the processes is the Skype, but it has some kind of problems. And then there's problems maybe meeting in person in the sense that you meet in person, but you only can do it once in a year. So you're kind of weighing the benefits and cost advantages, disadvantages of different processes and looking for positive processes.
And I feel mostly heard there, but I think the part that makes me happiest about, what works on this conversation, even so, is that at the deepest level, we have, really substantial shared values. And I like that.
Oh, they kind of like, no matter the process, those deepest shared values kind of come up anyway.
At least they did here. So that's nice.
I hear you saying that people, I'm wondering if you're saying or thinking that people in general, human beings, share quite a few deep values. And then from there's plenty of disagreement and even opposition. But still, nonetheless, that they, as humans, share deep values. I'm taking it further than what you just said, but is that right?
Yes, I think it is. At least I hope it's right.
Yeah, me too.
Joan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is that okay, Edwin?
Sure, let's try it. This is the first circle we're doing, so this is like a learning experience. I do try to keep the reflective part kind of going, but we can kind of expand on it too. So
I love what you said. I definitely agree that those shared values exist. To what degree do you think other people perceive it that way? I'm curious whether this observation, oh hey, compassion, honesty, etc. Do you think the general public believes that, or is this kind of a unique observation?
I think that the general public, we were talking about the different assumptions we make about each other across, kind of tribal lines. And those exist, and that's what's talked about more. But my experience from the not vast number, but the conversations that we have had in person is that at that fundamental level, people find those shared values. So my belief is fundamentally very optimistic, is that if you can start by going there, and that you can, because we haven't had the conversation yet where that wasn't possible to go there to start with. That's a couple dozen conversations. It's not a huge number, but it's also zero, counterexamples.
And you're talking, for Patrice's benefit, you're talking about the living room conversations from your model. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is my perception, and Edwin, by the way, just to let you know where I am, I'm feeling more hesitancy about the process than I am. I'm almost like trying to play. I'm a conservative. I like to follow the rules, like authority. And I'm more worried about that than I am connecting with the three of them. So I don't know if, you don't want us to just be walking on eggshells trying to follow the rules, right?
Yeah, you're concerned that that you're feeling that you're a conservative and you like to follow the rules, and that you're kind of like feeling some discomfort here because you're wanting to follow the rules, but you're wondering if that you don't think that I want you to be walking on eggshells here either.
Right. And I see Patrice's look on her face. Patrice, that goes back to an inside joke with me and Phil from the book. So Phil follows some of the rules too. He cares about authority, I found out as well.
Jacob, what I heard was that you were being a little jokey when you talked about, of course, I'm a conservative, I care about the rules, that although you do want to follow, to go with the format and try and honor it, and I think that's great, and so do I. And I heard you also saying that you were asking Ed, in effect, can we be a little loose about the rules and in order to connect best with each other? That's right. What I heard you doing, is asking him for permission. Is that right?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and not be so worried about who goes next and the way we say it. Maybe but I just want to enjoy these people too. So.
Yeah.
While we're on the issue of process, how long is this scheduled to take?
We have another half hour. It was an hour and a half.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was probably in the emails that I missed. So, okay. Just so that I know.
Okay. Well.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Will that work for you? Patrice,
yeah,
will that work for you?
Totally fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll direct.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, perhaps, via email or what have you in the future, we can all provide some feedback about the process and how, and any thoughts that we have about whether it could be improved or whatever, because it is the first time and there's going to be a learning curve about that. I'm sure for you, Edwin, there'll be a learning curve and there'll be adjustments in it. I think the idea behind it is a great one.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be critical either.
Yeah, so we can discuss it maybe afterwards. I guess I'll actually direct my comment to Joan. I'm also looking for a process to foster empathic connection between people and dialogue. And I found that the kind of reflective listening process kind of slows the discussion down and can create that connection between people. everybody can keep speaking until they feel fully heard. And I'm seeing, it's how to get people comfortable. It's like a new process, a new way of doing things. So it takes a little bit to get people kind of comfortable in that process. If you would be willing to reflect.
Um, you're looking at the empathic process you're trying to create here with us, and seeing that it takes some time to get people comfortable with that process. Is there any more of that you think
it's the process, kind of reflective process, and it slows the conversation down, and it makes it that each person can speak until they feel fully heard. So there's not a competition for space and time.
So it slows the process down and makes it so each person feels heard and is not competing for space and time.
Yeah, but I don't want to be too rigid about it either. Like say you have to do. So I'm kind of looking for that edge there of letting things kind of run, but that we come back to reflective listening too. That we don't forget that part. That we're really trying to reflect and hear what the other person is saying, and kind of be have some innovation, try different things too. But that we keep coming back to that awareness.
That you want to continue to come back to the reflective listening, even if it goes away from it a little bit at times.
Yeah. What's really important is just that people can really connect, heart through their heart, to really what's going on for them authentically, is because that's really the intention.
And you really want to make sure that people connect with their heart, because that's what empathic listening is really about for you.
Yeah, that they can, that they don't have to, but that they can.
Patrice, are you okay with the next half an hour?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There are some logistics. So I do have another person in the room, and I'm just discussing a few things with her. But no, it's totally fine.
Okay.
Okay, I feel heard on that. So, Joan, you're.
I'd like to say hello to the other person in the room. Hello.
Bring them in.
Oh, hey there. Okay. Thank you. That includes everybody. I'd like to direct something to Edwin. Just the thought, food for thought, that there are one method some people sometimes use to do what you're trying to do is have a facilitator who kind of lets people go a little bit, but periodically stops the conversation and says to someone, hey, did you feel heard there? Or asks someone to repeat back what someone else said, because they perceive that a person is getting a little squelched, right? And so forth. And that maybe gives it a more organic flow to the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like just let it kind of run the way it wants to run, and then if it kind of gets people are kind of getting disconnected, kind of bring it back to make sure that everybody is feeling heard.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel heard. That's
Yeah. Thanks. I really appreciate that that comment. I mean that. So I'm feeling a little bit like Patrice. I'd like to feel kind of like to hear something. Feel more of a connection with you, actually.
Well, good. Thank you.
All right, shoot me a question.
I don't know. I guess I'm just wanting to let you know that I'm wanting a sense of connection with you. If you'd be willing to reflect that would be satisfying to me.
Okay. What you're saying is that you want to feel a greater sense of connection with me.
Yeah, thanks. I feel heard on that. So,
Great.
To you, or anyone.
Go ahead.
No, I just was prompting. Is there anything you'd like me to talk about?
Well, we could, maybe this is a good time to shift into the kind of the next phase. We had kind of talked about it. Those had three questions, but was kind of letting this one kind of play itself out. Is from your value, your most important value, how do you think that that relates to empathy? What is the relationship of, I think your value, Patrice, was wanting to wanting people to really not just help people, but have them change. And how does, as I recall, how does that relate to empathy?
Um, so what you're asking me is how my value that said before, which is charity, how that relates to empathy,
Yeah,
or
charity. Hmm.
or basically how empathy relates to the type of improvement for people that I hope. And actually, I think that empathy is a really good way of describing what I would hope for people. Like I would hope for people to become like empathetic is one of those values. Integrity is one of those values. For people to have stronger character, and I think that empathy is one of, if not the. I mean, I don't really rank character attributes in my mind, or I haven't before, but empathy is so incredibly important. Um, I think that teaching people empathy would be an incredible intervention. And what on earth are you drinking?
I was thinking that too.
It's the color of your shirt.
I'm wearing it, not drinking it.
Spinach. It's a green drink. Dr. Oz. Go online and, you know. My family has cancer. We got two people dead and one they're facing it, and so lots of preventative stuff. It actually tastes pretty good.
You had to throw down the cancer card. I was going to make fun of you, but now I can't.
You can't. Ah,
I make fun of him no matter what, so,
I'll send you the
yeah.
recipe.
Sorry,
It's
Jacob.
pretty good.
So the others, what does how does empathy relate to compassion and the other values that we were hearing?
I agree that it fits right in with the other values we have. It's, you know, it is part of being compassionate or loving. It's being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, literally. You know, that's when you say reflective listening is empathy, that you're trying to um, put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Go for it. Anyone else?
I hear you saying that, yeah, we got to it's very important for people to put themselves in other people's shoes. And I agree. And in fact, I would say empathy is perhaps almost a synonym for compassion. Compassion isn't pity, and empathy, either one of them can turn into pity. Compassion is a kind of caring that involves understanding, but not the same as pity. So we might even mean the same thing by these words, and so that's one reason why I signed on to this conversation, because I believe in empathy. You know, that said, how does one get to empathy across the political divide? Like for a liberal to have empathy for a conservative or vice versa. I'm not sure that if we stick to the level of our general values, we're going to get there, because we could agree on this general word, empathy, but only when we dig into the tough stuff, like we have very different narratives of what the facts are and so forth, will we maybe discover and really get convinced that that other person is a caring person. Like, oh, I see, you think that government doesn't give handouts, so now I understand that you're a caring person. That's why, right, right. So that's what I think about how we get to empathy. I don't know if that's too much at once or if clear.
I
So let
wasn't
me
clear on that. It was like we get to empathy. Oh, all right.
Sorry, I could see, to make sure I understand, Phil. Sometimes the different worldviews are so orthogonal, so disparate that we're not even connecting at the level of values. Finding some way to get that, some way to see that that other person. No, wait. You're saying we have to talk about the worldviews to dig down to see that on the level of value and heart that maybe there's some commonality, and that gets covered up sometimes when we just keep throwing our facts at each other.
Or if we just keep throwing our values at each other, it could turn into a kind of superficial group hug if we all agree that we love compassion, right? But we don't dig in, and I don't really find out that you're compassionate because I understand better your worldview, and I understand better why you are trying to be compassionate by maybe opposing a government program that I favor or something, right? So that's all. Either one. I mean, it's not. Sometimes the problem isn't negativity or accusation. Sometimes the problem is we just talk about general values. Like we might have very different ideas about what it is to be patriotic, but we might, both, endorse patriotism, for example. So you got to dig in, and then you develop empathy because you really understand the other person.
And you're saying that kind of understanding at a deep level of the content of what somebody really believes, that can lead to more of the connection rather than just saying, oh, we just all have to go and talk about all our shared values and that's the way to get the compassion. It's also the conversation about really where we're coming from, trying to understand.
Thank you. Yes, I feel heard. Yes. Very nice.
I'm glad you feel heard.
I'll give you an example. I read a book about terrorists. I'm trying to remember the author's name. An amazing book. He interviewed all these religious militants who advocate and use violence to try to pursue their what they see as their religious objectives. Muslim fundamentalists, Sikh fundamentalists, Christian fundamentalists who are violent. And the interviews revealed that those people tend to think that they're under attack. So when I understood their worldview better, I hated them less. Okay? I still didn't agree with their violent militant terrorist actions, but I had more empathy for them than before.
I had a similar experience to that recently. Sorry, do you want me to reflect something or can we talk?
No, don't reflect anything, please. Just speak.
I am not hearing you. I am just speaking. Sorry, sarcasm, unnecessary. But no, I read an article about Hillary Clinton lately, and I have interacted actually personally with Hillary Clinton multiple times and have been left with nothing but feelings of negative feelings, strong negative feelings. But this article was actually about Chelsea, and it talked about even during, I guess it was the 92 campaign, how either she or Bill were there to do homework with her every single night, and what great parents they are. And that made me see Hillary in a very, very different light. So even, I mean, in this instance, the level of interaction is very minimal, right? Like I've interacted personally with her and came across, and it did not go well, but learning something else about her that corresponds with my values, which is the importance of family, that's what helped me.
Yeah, nice. I hear you saying that this fact you learned about her was very important in adjusting your overall view of her because you dug into some actual fact about how she lives and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure that my overall view of her is that much different. But I like that thing about her. Now I have a thing about her that I like. If I were to be in a room with her again, I could have a conversation with her about something that I like.
Well, I was hearing that everyone was kind of seeing a connection between empathy and their value. I didn't hear that. Jacob, were you feeling that too, or I don't think you shared the connection there yet.
I don't have anything to add to that question.
Uh-huh.
I think the others covered it pretty nicely, but have other things to say about the other questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I was kind of looking like, I mean, the question for me is how do we create more empathy between the different parties, across political lines, and what can we do? This is kind of like my attempt to do that, and have some kind of processes that can actually kind of foster that. Because what's going to happen if we're kind of left to our own devices, I see it in my family. Family comes together, and it turns into this conflict and all these judgments. And there has to be some ways to kind of slow the conversation down and to make sure that everybody's kind of feeling kind of heard. That if you can slow it down and that somebody is heard, and that they know that the other person has really heard them, that they kind of take some of the edge off. So I see that as kind of one way that we can connect everyone's values to empathy, and how do we then foster kind of an empathic connection.
Awesome. So drawing on your Thanksgiving dinner and your family kind
Yeah.
of get-togethers, you're talking about you're kind of been on this journey to find how to make that empathic connection across some of the political divides, and the slowing down technique that we've been practicing for an hour is one way that I agree can help kind of, well, it can help the connection, and you're just interested in other ways as well.
Yeah, and I see that in Joan is trying to do that as well. She's creating those living room dialogues to get people together, and I'm kind of like wondering, like, how do you kind of see it, Joan, happening, like in the living room dialogues? And both of you, I think Phil and Jacob, you took part in the living room dialogues as well.
Yeah, I'd love for Patrice to hear this from Joan as well. We're familiar with this, but she isn't. So go ahead.
So living room conversations.
Conversations, sorry.
The first hour of them is basically about finding it out, and you co-host with a friend, and then each friend brings two friends, and that's why Jacob and Phil could do this, and it was, a really nice kind of gathering to have. But you've got a friends and friends and friends network, and I'm actually seeing, from what you said, I'm empathizing with your having a family that's in conflict. The one thing I've said is that I think living room conversations work really well with friends and friends of friends. I'm not sure they work in a family. So, because families have overcome many of the social barriers we have to be nice to each other too often. And so I see why you created a structure that is actually quite a bit more controlling than the living room conversations, which I think Phil and Jacob might tell you didn't give them as much free range as they might have liked. So it's a continuum of what you need depending on the people that are there in the room or there online, as in this case, and figuring out how to give people the optimal tools for connecting is what I'm hoping the living room conversations. In the first conversation, the first hour is about discovering you really like the people you're sitting with, including the people that are different than you. And what's sad is too many people have not been, oh boy, we've got a baby in the conversation. Hello. Being part of Moms Rising, having babies in the background is one of the things that makes me happy. So it feels more like at home for me. Anyway, that's the living room conversation.
I can't understand anymore. Can you all understand?
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't hear.
Can you hear this right now?
Yes, Jake, I heard that.
Okay.
And what about me now?
It's Joan. I can't hear Joan. Can you all hear Joan?
Yes. Do you hear me? sometimes leaving and coming back to the conversation will clear that up. Just a quick hang up and then come back. Yeah, so that's one of the technical problems. I mean, it does, the technical problems kind of shift the energy and it creates kind of more of a stress in terms. So it's, you know, it's had various degrees of success. Once the technology kind of gets worked out, and it can resolve a lot of that kind of aspect, I'm finding.
Joan, I thought you made a nice point about just like a continuum of structure that, that what Ed's doing, what you're doing, what any dialogue does, falls somewhere along the line of let's provide some additional support so that we don't just do what instinctually, automatically we think we want to do. And as you provide some of those breaks and guides, people have the capacity to do this. And so the interesting question becomes, what are the guides that are needed in different situations? That's kind of a nice way to frame it.
Yeah, I mean, I see where the empathic listening in a very structured way in a volatile situation would be really useful. And, you know, in this context where we're not volatile particularly, sometimes it's felt like it's slowed down our ability to talk about what we want to talk about. So it's...
Patrice, you're back. Patrice, can you hear me?
Welcome.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, oh good. Sorry you're experiencing these technical difficulties. I know that it's frustrating.
I apologize. Frustrating for you as well.
We were talking about the idea that there are different ways, maybe a continuum of organizational setups, conversational setups or designs, depending on the group of people and the situation, and different ones that work in different situations. And yeah, I agree with Joan that there are norms between people that operate face to face that make them tend to be polite, which don't always operate in the family. So, right? And they also sometimes difficult shared history in the family that pushes people's buttons. So, yeah, it could be a more controlled or careful discussion might be appropriate in family settings. Absolutely.
So when it's not radicals, kind of like people like us, you know, who maybe doesn't have to be so controlled. And for really conflict situations, you add kind of more control in terms of really having a structure to foster that empathic connection. We do empathy circles, and we've done about 15 of them. And it's actually people who are, you know, we're friends, we're kind of getting to know each other. And I actually find that the reflective listening is actually contributing to kind of, at first it's a little awkward because people want to kind of jump in there with their comments or their questions. But as time went on, it's felt like it took a couple of meetings, but then it felt like the conversation, we kind of integrated this space and this listening, and the conversations have been just, it's like people are falling in love with each other. You know, it's like scary.
I hear you. I also don't see you moving. Your picture is frozen for me, but I'm hearing you just fine, which is the main thing.
Edwin, we only have a couple more minutes.
Oh yeah, sorry. Wow. Yeah.
Want to do something else, or
yeah, we could kind of bring it to a close. That was really the last question we had, and we kind of got into that, was just starting the process of really brainstorming a little bit, discussing what we can do to foster empathic connection. And I feel, you know, we've been talking about that, and you know, we're certainly not going to solve the world's, the political divide just in this, hour and a half. But I hope that this is kind of a beginning, and that we can kind of try this out in the future. At least I want to just kind of keep these conversations going and do more of them. And, you know, I hope that you'll give it another try in terms of, you know, we know a little bit more about the technical parts to, you know, really make sure that people, have the earphones or have the, just the technology maybe tested out in advance or something like that to make it all run smoother and be more supportive of empathic connection. Yeah, since we only have about 4 minutes, maybe we can just have a quick word from everyone, just any kind of a final comment, or starting with whoever would like to start.
I could see myself, Ed, doing this in the future. I think what I would do is get my father-in-law, who is extremely conservative, on with Joan and Phil, and maybe you would come away thinking liberals do have brains and hearts. I think that the accusation, what I'm taking away from this is that the level of accusation at who those other people are, and Patrice, I hear the stereotype from liberals that conservatives are the dumb ones. They're the ones who aren't very, I was in a very liberal graduate program as a conservative student. It was the perception that the conservatives aren't as educated. And so whether it's accusation about not being smart enough or not being caring enough, that's what I think gets in the way of all this. And last thing I'd say is, Phil, it struck me that understanding is the goal of dialogue. And I think you're right that as people understand, the empathy comes, the compassion comes. Like, you see each other's hearts as you really understand them. So maybe that's another goal of dialogue, albeit indirectly, that as we understand each other, we can connect on that level of heart, and some of the accusation, some of the resentment that builds up dissipates a little bit. That's kind of exciting. So connection between dialogue and empathy, Ed. So thanks for facilitating this, Ed.
Here. Yeah.
Nobody needs to feed that back.
Are you muted?
Patrice,
I
you
know
may be
you all
muted.
can hear me, but I can hear you.
I hear you now. Good.
There you go.
We hear you.
Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Oh, okay, well, I can't hear you, but so I'll just say thank you and nice meeting you all. And I apologize for the tech issues. I don't know why it's not working. I'm in a grad program that requires me to do these things a lot, and I haven't had these problems. But good luck with the empathy building. I think that is an incredibly worthy endeavor. And yeah, best wishes.
You can't hear me, so I'm making gestures. I hope that your sound kicks in, Patrice. Yes, thank you, everybody. I am willing to participate in the future as often as time allows, and I'm sure it will allow. And we're also open to talking about the process and so on. So it was definitely worthwhile. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you too. It's great to be able to see you guys again and to get to meet you, Patrice. And thank you for facilitating this, Edward. It's really wonderful to be able to try new ways of connecting and finding common ground.
And perhaps we can close. I like what you're saying about new ways of connecting. One of the exercises or one of the activities we do in our circle is we kind of find some kind of emotion that someone is feeling, and we all mirror it so that it's not just words, but it's the physical emotion. So is there some emotion that someone is feeling like sharing? We'd like to see everyone mirror.
I don't know if I can help with this. I don't know that I want to mirror other people's emotions. That feels oppressive to me. That's my emotion, right? Like, you have your emotion, so I should be able to have mine. I shouldn't, why should I mirror your emotion?
Yeah.
Okay, that seems invasive to me.
I see. Okay. Well, that's kind of, we can talk about that kind of offline. There's a whole studies about mirror neurons and how mirror neurons work, and we're kind of like building on that process. So I think we have another topic for the next circle too. So thanks for mentioning that, Phil.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll call the circle closed, and thank you to everyone, and I look forward to trying. There was a motion. I saw that one, so I have no.
Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.